Dear learners and listeners, viewers, welcome to this session. This lecture is part of the course BGP 003. This is part of the certificate program in Gandhian Thought and Peacekeeping. I am Dr. G. Uma, working as an assistant professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. The title of today's lecture and part of this unit is From War to Dialogue, Emerging Approaches to Conflict Resolution. Based on this unit, I have prepared two lectures, part 1 and part 2. Let us start with part 1. We all heard that word war. Usually war is the use of organized force between two human groups pursuing contradictory policies. Even though policies by territorial exaggeration pursued by both states are against each other, each group seeks to impose its policy upon the other. Medieval scholars developed the idea of quote, just war, unquote, a war fought in self-defense or to produce justice that did not aim at destroying an opponent, but to re-establish the conditions for peace and amity. However, in modern times, as we all reading, theories tended to follow the idea of Thomas Hobbes in seeing war as the natural condition of man. Even Immanuel Kant postulated that man in nature existed in a state of war. Not all theorists accepted the idea that man is naturally warlike. Like Thomas Paine, quote, war was the product of the monarchical system which violated the natural equality of men by violence in the interest of the few and taught many to fear and envy the warlike, unquote. He proclaimed, when democracy became universal, a war would disappear. In addition, some nationalists visualized war as a means to unity and progress and followed the German historian Heinrich von Treitschke, who sees war as the health of the state. This was quoted by McWilliams in the year 1966. Most of the decisions which shaped the fate of the world were taken in early 20th century. The First World War was to have a profound impact on the future of the world, as we all must have read in the history and our political science classes. In the aftermath of the First World War, relations between states were disturbed by problems arising from the peace settlement Treaty of Versailles, which had come in June 1919. It was one of the most controversial settlements ever signed and was even criticized by the Allied countries on the grounds that it was too hard on the Germans. During this phase, the League of Nations on the one hand was struggling to sort out things. After the First World War, the future of Europe and the world was defined by the Treaty of Versailles. The victorious Allies forced serious penalties on Germany, who was in no position to object. The Germans' right-wing nationalists were resentful at the provisions of the treaty. The slow movement towards war, however, characterized the interstate period for many years. But the most major aspect of the Second World War was the formation of certain groups and axes. The end of Second World War also generated uncertainty and mistrust. We all know that the destruction caused by the First World War and Second World War and its impact on each and every countries in the world. So, after the end of Second World War, there was uncertainty and mistrust. The big three leaders after the Second World War, namely Winston Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin, met the Yalta Conference in 1945 to design a new world order. The United Nations organizations emerged in the year 1945 after the end of the Second World War as a successor to the League of Nations, because after the First World War, the world leaders, they formed the League of Nations. In fact, the League of Nations is not able to settle the issues between the nations. One way the League of Nations is the first international organization emerged after the First World War, but it could not materialize and it was not able to fulfill the objectives of the League of Nations. So, after the end of the Second World War, the United Nations organization emerged in 1945 as a successor to the League of Nations. Its main aim was to try to maintain world peace, and on the whole, it has been more doing well than its unfortunate predecessors. I have mentioned, this was mentioned by Lowe in 1977. Since then, both the policy makers and scholars have been emphasizing on the need to maintenance of peace, and if there are situations of conflict, their solutions through peaceful methods. Dialogue is one of the key components. As you all know, whenever there is a conflict, there is an resentment, there is an disagreement on certain issues between two people or between two nations. It is important, we must understand that the dialogue is the very important process to sort out the disagreement between any two, like between two nations or multiple nations or between two individuals. Dialogue is the very important key component within the broader definition of peace building. Okay, when we come into the dialogue table, automatically everybody will share their own points of view over a period of time. This may lead to the very significant solutions for any disagreement. So, dialogue is one of the key components within the broader definition of peace building. Conflict resolution is the method and process of negotiation, arbitration and institution building which promote the peaceful ending of social conflict and war. The goal of dialogue is to develop just approaches to conflict resolution as well as improve relationships, understanding and trust between individuals and groups in conflict with one another. In this lecture and subsequent lectures, we will discuss the movement of the vision from war to dialogue and various aspects related to the dialogue. So, I have developed this lecture and subsequent lecture based on the following learning objectives. After going through this reading material, the reading material is part of the unit, and after listening this lecture, you all will be able to understand the necessity of non-violent alternatives for dispute resolution, the methods of dialogue and negotiation as a process of conflict resolution, and the use of dialogue and negotiations by the international community and their limitations. Now, let us look at the issues related to the from war to dialogue. As you have already listened and read in other units that there are two categories of approaches to solve any disputes. One is a violent method, another one is a peaceful method. War is a most violent method since the end of World War II, the effects of which are still fresh. The international community has been engaged to avoid war at all levels. The world has transformed rapidly in the decade since the end of Cold War. The end of an era of bipolarity, the new wave of democratization, increasing globalization of information and economic power, more frequent efforts at international coordination of security policy, the reaction of sometimes violent expressions of claims to right based on cultural identity and the reclassification of sovereignty that imposes on states new tasks to their citizens and the world community. These transformations are changing much in the world, including, it seems, the shape of organized violence and the ways in which governments and the others try to set its limits. One indication of change is the notable decrease in the frequency and death toll of international wars in the 1990s. That is the very good sign. All the nations, they understood the effect of Second World War. Every nations, whether developed or developing, European, American, Asian countries, they have they experienced the serious destructions in the Second World War. So, after the end of Second World War, United Nations has emerged, and mostly the war is not the right way to find the solutions for any conflict. So, best way is to for the conflict resolution is to peaceful dialogue. So, we all can see, and after the globalization, most of the countries entered into the economic globalization in 1990s. In 1980s itself, most of the South American countries, some Asian countries, they have entered into the economic globalization. In not only the economic globalization, there was a democratization throughout the world. Many countries, they entered into the democratization process. All this democratization, economic globalization is a very notable change throughout the world. This notable change has really contributed for the decrease in the frequency and death toll in the international wars in the 1990s. Like subnational ethnic and religious conflicts, however, have been so intense that the first post-Cold War decade was marked by enough deadly lower intensity conflicts to make it the bloodiest since the arrival of nuclear weapons. A potentially revolutionary change in world politics has been in reality redefinition of international conflict. International conflict still includes the old-fashioned war, a violent conflict between the nation states acting through their own armed forces or proxies, with at least one state fighting outside its borders. But now some conflicts are treated as threats to the international peace and security, even if two states are not fighting. Particularly when the internal conflicts involve violations of universal norms such as the self-determination, human rights or democratic governance, concerted international actions including the threat or use of force are being taken to prevent, conclude or resolve them, just as they sometimes have been for old-fashioned wars. In this sense, some conflicts within the country's borders are being treated as international, like us all may see, like within the border some countries they have experienced the internal conflicts. Sometimes the international communities, they treat internal conflicts as an international conflicts. These conflicts both interstate and intrastate, need to be managed. As already said, conflicts are and can be managed both by violent and non-violent means. So, non-violent means basically it is through the dialogue. So far we have read about the conflict, how the world community experienced the destructions after the First and Second World War, and there are two ways to address the conflict. One is the war, another one is the dialogue. So, these things we have seen so far. Now, let us look at the traditional and emerging strategies for conflict resolution. The major practice of international conflict management during the Cold War period, the practices of traditional diplomacy reflected the state dominant in world politics for centuries. It made sense to treat international conflicts as occurring between nation states that acted in a unitary fashion on the basis of staple and discrete national interests rooted in geopolitics, natural resources and other enduring features of countries. If the behavior of states was dictated by such interests, it followed that conflict between states reflected conflict interest. Such conflicts were often perceived as zero sum. The more one stand gained, more its adversary lost. So, in the world of national interest, the chief methods of international conflict management were the traditional diplomatic, military and economic means of influence, including the threat or use of force. These tools of power politics, the same tools that states used to engage in international conflict, were the main ones employed in efforts to address the conflict. The states or coalitions of states try to prevent or mitigate violence by using threats of armed force, for example, deterrence, coercive diplomacy, defensive alliances such as NATO, economic sanctions and other tangible non-military threats and punishments such as the withdrawal of foreign aid and direct military force to establish demilitarized zones. States were also sensitive to delicate balance of nuclear power that could be jeopardized by this kind of coercive diplomacy. For this reason in particular, they sought security regimes that provided norms devised to reduce the risk of escalation. The implicit understandings gained through an extended arms control negotiation process serve to reduce the chances of superpower military confrontations during this period. Now, let us look into the dialogue. Dialogue essentially is a conversation between two or more people. According to the Encyclopedia of Evolution, it is an interaction between people with different perspectives and interests who intend to learn from one another. It can be engaged in numerous ways like conversations, debate, discussion, critique, lesson, etc. It also presumes the certain respect for others. Dialogue enables the stakeholders to identify, involve, be sensitive and to plan to represent one's interest as well as understand the interest and intentions of opponent groups. There is less agreement about whether the dialogue should result in consensus or mutual deep understanding, whether or similarities or differences. There is no doubt that if not in resolution of conflict, dialogue can be definitely play an important role in reduction of conflicts. As we all know, dialogue is a very important. In the beginning of this lecture itself, we have seen there are two ways we can resolve the conflict. One is the war, another one is the dialogue. So, let us see the dialogical approach. In dealing with the conflicts, the role of dialogue is being considered as very significant. Dialogue projects as a grassroots peace building and interpersonal reconciliation efforts. They relate to the local or neighborhood level and bring together people who have similar interest or are caught in similar situations. The central elements are personal encounters and the elimination of barriers to communication. Dialogue projects combined with individual capacity building, these projects are a quote, combination of training and conflict management unquote, and enhance participants' skills in interacting with one another. Such encounters provide an ideal setting to try out dialogue skills. Like for example, dialogue projects, whenever there is anybody initiate the dialogue to resolve the certain conflicts. So, dialogue projects combined with institution building, networking and practical projects. These dialogue are quote, only possible after successful conclusion of a fairly long process of confidence building. The task in many cases is either to institutionalize the dialogue in the form of inter-ethnic advisory bodies, reconciliation commissions or NGO networks, or set up or build the capacity of individual NGOs unquote. Dialogue projects can contribute the most by promoting a culture based on dialogue, which can be used by individuals, groups or organizations to deal with conflicts constructively. Dialogue can take many forms like now we have seen the dialogue. Now, let us see the another important process in the conflict resolution, that is the negotiations. Negotiation in the world of national interests intends balancing or trading the challenging interest of states against one another or finding common interest that could be the basis for agreement even in the face of other conflicting interest. A search for common interest was characteristic of Cold War era negotiations aimed at preventing military confrontations between the United States and Soviet Union. Such negotiations could proceed because it was possible to identify shared interests that cut across or partially override the conflicting ones. The traditional diplomatic strategies of influence were refined and elaborately elaborated greatly during the Cold War period. They continue to be relevant in the post-Cold War world, although their application is sometimes a bit different now. In deploying and intimidating the force to address and possibly resolve conflicts, there has been increased emphasis during the post-Cold War period on multilateral actions. Example, NATO intervention in Kosovo, the alliance that reversed the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. So, states have increasingly looked to regional international organizations to advance conflict resolution goals, especially where unilateral state action might create new kinds of conflict and where influential nations within regions see merit in strengthening their region's institutions. Thus, for example, the Conference of Security and Cooperation in Europe began in the 1970s, matured in the 1990s into a formal organization, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, that has intervened in various ways in conflicts a broad region, although not by force. Military organizations are now increasingly being used in new ways and for new conflict resolution process. Armed forces are frequently used in direct interventions, even in Europe where regional organizations are particularly strong. Peacekeeping missions still sometimes physically separate adversaries to prevent further violence, but they also provide humanitarian relief, resettle refugees and build infrastructure. So far we have seen negotiations, we have seen dialogical approach, and we have seen how these conflict resolutions, what are the traditional and emerging strategies for conflict resolutions, and how the world after the First and Second World War, how the world order has emerged from war to dialogue, because every countries in the world, they have faced lots of destructions after the First and Second World War. After 1990s, there was an economic liberalization, and there was most of the countries, they are entering into the democratic ways of bringing the government. So, all this process really brought lots of peace in the world. Still there is a good development as far as international conflict resolutions are concerned, but with regard to subnational conflicts, still there was according to the one study, after 1991 the subnational conflicts were highest in many countries. So, so far we have learnt about the conflict resolution and negotiation and dialogical approach. For this we will continue this unit in our next lecture also. We have prepared this unit and this lecture based on these references. One is the Carriage Commission on Preventing Deadly Conflict, published in the year 1997, Preventing Deadly Conflict Final Report, Carnegie Commission, and published from Washington DC. Next one is the David Hardiman in 2003, Gandhi in His Time and Others, The Global Legacy of Ideas, London, Hearst and Company, George A. Lanier and Wilson C. McWilliams in the 1966, titled as Crisis and Continuity in World Politics, New York, Random House. So, Hu Mial, Oliver Ramsbotham and Tom Woodhouse in the year 1990 published Contemporary Conflict Transformations, published by the International Alert from London. Next one is the J. G. Merrills in the year 2005, International Dispute Settlement, published by the Cornell University Press from New York. Nopat Roberts from the year 2004, From Resolution to Transformation, the Role of Dialogue Projects, Berg of Handbook for Conflict Transformation. It is published from Berlin. And we have referred from Thomas Webber, Conflict Resolution and Gandhian Ethics, New Delhi by Gandhi Peace Foundations. We have taken references from all these books. So, we will continue in this next lecture from the same unit. Thank you for the learners, viewers and listeners for listening this lecture. Let us listen next lecture also. Thank you.